I'm really honored to be moderating this panel of five such incredible women. Their stories are inspiring for many, many reasons, and you're going to hear all about it. But I will say that as I was learning about them, the thing that struck me most over and over again was how much their stories really do embody the theme of resilience. They've shown perseverance time and time again while overcoming a really wide range of obstacles. Really excited to hear more about those stories. But first, I just wanted to tell you a little bit of information about Comma DC, which is the organization that's hosting this. I'm a volunteer with Comma, and we're a grassroots nonprofit organization that's dedicated to providing a platform for immigrants and refugees in the DMV area to share their skills through storytelling or through classes. And our ultimate goal is to try and foster a more welcoming and educated community. I'll tell you more about some of the events that we put on at the end. But for now, that's just an overview of what our mission is, and hopefully today's event helps us work towards that. As you all know, we're here today in honor of Women's Month 2021. Um, the past year has really exemplified the need for perseverance and patience for all of us, but women especially have had to have bear the brunt of all the havoc that the pandemic wreaked. I mean, most essential workers are women. Childcare needs and household work tend to fall on women's shoulders more. There's also been a really upsetting rise in domestic violence over the past year, which unfortunately predominantly affects women. So, to pay homage to all that women do and all that women are, we're here today, and I'd like to pass the metaphorical mic over to our five guest speakers to introduce themselves. After that, I'll have a few questions for them, and then we're going to open it up for the last 30 minutes or so to all of you for whatever questions you might have. So feel free to type those out in the chat box as you think of them, and we'll just save them and ask it when it's time. Yeah, we want this to be as interactive as possible. And yeah, for now, let's start with Myra Dagepa. I'm so sorry.
Sorry. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And I'm so blessed and so thrilled to be among these amazing ladies. And I'm looking forward to hear from them too, apparently. Anyway, my name is Myra Dagipa, and I was born in the eastern jungle of Burma, let's call it. And a lot of friends call me a jungle woman or a jungle girl, which I like it anyway. So I was born in internally displaced area, and so born as an internally displaced person. And I grew up since I lived in the jungle until I was like about 8. Because of the Burmese military's brutality, because they come over to our village, they burn down the houses on the ground. We have to literally jump out from the house and flee for life. So pretty much what is going on in our Burma right now, where many of you might follow, and the past February 1st, that's when the coup took over the country again. So, so there were times when I had to flee for our lives, and I was a child. Of course, children are crying, right? But we were not crying, or we couldn't cry because the Burmese army will be finding us, and then that is why we literally like the elderly people put their hands on our mouths so that we don't make the noise, and we couldn't be found. So that was the situation. I was there, and would you? Are we going to say is that situation is over? It's not over yet, and that is why I'm really thankful for the event today. So moving forward, because of the villages weren't burned down, and then I went to different places, and I ended up in Thailand border. That's when I became a refugee, and finally, after a certain amount of time in the refugee camp, so altogether about 15 to 17 years, then I ended up in the US back in 2004. So coming to the US is also pretty challenging because I came with very basic English language. So going to school, trying to find a job, all these are challenging, but I'm so grateful that the country offered me some opportunity where I get to learn, and this is where I am today. And I'm happy to share my story further along the event. Um, Now I'm working with an organization called US Campaign for Burma. That is where we are raising the voices of the people on the ground, especially at this current situation in Burma. Our voice is very needed. So I will also wanting to share with you about what people, especially women on the ground, are suffering at this point of time. Um, yes, I think that's about it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Myra. Next up, we wanted to hear a bit from Nanit Talani.
Thank you for inviting me here. My name is Nanit. I was born and raised in Congo Brazzaville. But when I was born, my father left my mother. He found another lady. So I was raised by a single mother, and it wasn't easy because you don't have your father and you can't completely have your mother because she has to be a mother and a father in the same time. So she needs time to work. She needs time to train you for school and for life. So it wasn't easy. Sometimes you have to try to make things by yourself. And later we had civil wars. So just you woke up one day and your neighbors become your enemies. They were saying hi to you. They don't say hi to you anymore. And I was just like 11 when we have the first civil war. So you have to leave everything and go to another country. So in your country, you become refugee because you don't have anywhere to go. And we have a lot of civil war since 1993 until now in Congo. We don't have real peace. You have school interruption all the time and people dropping school because when you're coming from a civil war, you don't have money to pay maybe a furniture for school or to pay. You don't have fees for many things at school to buy your books. So a lot of people just dropping school. But if since I knew I wanted to make it, I was persistent. I said, no, I have just to continue, even though we had interruptions. So sometimes you have a year without going to school. And then when you come back, you just to continue. Because of civil wars, besides school, you have to interrupt. You have friends dying and family members being killed just because of civil war. And so you have to deal with all those things. Emotionally, it wasn't easy even up to now because you still keep in mind all those things, but you have to live with them. You become poor. And also when you find a job, like me, when you finding a job, it wasn't easy because in my country, it's not like here. People, they see what your skills. Back home where I'm from, it's not about your skills. It's about really who you know. If you don't know anybody, it's not easy to find a job. For me, I had like 3 masters, one in law, one in communications, and one in journalism, but I couldn't find a job because I didn't know anybody. But I persisted since one day I went to attend a workshop, and I was giving a lot of ideas on how to organize things among journalists. So it was somebody coming from Europe, from Holland. So they have a project of training journalists in my country. So since they knew the way I was giving ideas, they say, we want to work with you. So that time I got a job with European Union. And later, because of that, even the UN noticed me when they decided to start a radio station for youth. I was selected to train those people are right now working in that station. And meanwhile, I got also a job as investigative journalist. And that one, I went through a lot because even my phone was taped from the government and I didn't have any privacy anymore because of work I was doing. The government didn't want me to do some investigations. I even have to leave my country and go live with friends because I was afraid of what the police would do to me. In the same time, I had a Fulbright scholarship, so the Fulbright Humphrey Fellow Scholarship, and I came here in 2015. But because of the work I was doing as investigative journalist, and I was doing here too, when I went to do my professional affiliation, I couldn't go back home. So I found myself being asylum seeker here. And being asylum seeker, it wasn't the only issue I found myself in this country, even the language. When I came, I wasn't able to speak English. I knew some grammar rules, but speaking English was very hard. I had to go to school first in Virginia Tech to learn English. I was given 6 months to learn English and then go to University of Maryland for 1 year. But even when I was going to the university, maybe I understood my teachers only maybe 60%. So I lost 40%. So it wasn't easy. And even you want like to continue your study, since back home I studied to do my PhD. I wanted to continue here, but you sometimes you think yourself, no, I think I cannot make it because English is so hard. So that's another issue. And when I was an asylum seeker without my work permit, even finding a house, it was very hard. Even though you have your savings, but you know how it is here, you have to show your check, your pay stub. If you don't have your pay stub, even though you have your money, nobody can rent you even a room. So I don't even know, in many places I have to live. So sometimes you live here 2 weeks and here 1 month because you don't have anywhere you can stay for a long time. So that was also another issue. And even securing a job, when you go into a job interview and they listen to you, they say, oh, she has an accent, so I don't know if she can make it. So when you coming from a country where they speak French, because we speak French as international language, we don't speak English. We learn just some rudiments of English, but there's some basics. So we don't speak English. So when you come here with your accent and they like, maybe she cannot understand information we're gonna give her. So that also very difficult, and you don't have any access to services like any help when you're waiting for your work permit. The government is not helping you, so you have to manage with the small saving you have, and it can be very hard. Another things I found here is isolation. You're missing your family. You just arrived and you don't have any friends, so you don't really have anybody to discuss a lot of things you would like to share with friends. But anyway, I'm here, and now I have started a small business. It wasn't easy because I have to do everything by myself and to write like all the document. Sometimes I remember one day I called somebody from the administration because I needed a document. Just to listen, maybe I just started to explain, she dropped the phone. So I just understood she is one of the person who cannot understand my English. And then you have to call again and again and again. So it's not easy, but we're here. So thank you for the invitation again.
Thank you so much, Nani. Um, so we're also lucky to have a mother-daughter duo with us today. So we're going to start with the mother. Here's Hasina Nixad. Hasina, I think you're still muted. There you go.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I would like to thank you, Kama, Washington, D.C., that provide this opportunity to share our stories. I grew in a family that rather than others, the women had access to most of the rights in the family. I'm a Fulbrighter. Can you hear me? I'm a Fulbrighter. I was a former professor at the university, Herat University, and I'm a women activist, women rights activist, and peace builder, and advocacy facilitator and consultant since 15 years ago in Afghanistan. When I came to, I got the Fulbright scholarship and I got back to Afghanistan. Before that, I taught at university, and when I got back to Afghanistan, because of the male dominant, the university refused me to hire again to teach at the university. And at that time, I just thought that, oh my God, there is something missing about the women's rights, and nobody can hear us, and nobody believe in us, and nobody want us uh, mm, uh, to get empowered. Uh, that is why I started working for the women's rights. And I was selected as I applied to several jobs. I was accepted to run the Afghan Women's Network at the zone part of Afghanistan. And I started my job, and I tried to attract women to be a member of our network, and created circles of women to advocate for women, to get training about women's rights, and to be unique voice of women. And later on, I established the Afghan Women's Organization for Equality. And since I work with the Afghan Women's Network, and we had trained lots of women about their rights. But recently, since 2016, 2014, 15, I saw that still women's voice cannot be heard at their own family. And that is why I consulted with my women's circles, and just we thought that we should create a men's network and teach the men how to defend women before being victims by the violence, after that, and during they are victimized by the and that work a lot. Uh, and I think there are questions that you will ask from us, and I think is enough for talking as to my 5 minutes will be. Um,
You still have a minute if you have more that you want to say.
um, okay, then when I was living in the country, I just thought most of the time I told the women, especially the young women, that we planned the way, and you have to be the end of the way, and you have to continue this way to get access to equality. And the young women, they were so excited about their participation and our trainings, and they got really empowered, and we introduced them to media to talk about their rights. And we sent them, we take them with us to the villages to talk to the women at the villages and hear their stories, villagers' stories. And they were really very happy about this, and they could convince their family that we have to work, we have to advocate for our rights. And when my family and I faced trade through the Taliban, and everybody know me as the women activist, and we have to leave the country. At that time, I just was very concerned about the women that especially the young women, that they were upset. They were upset, but I told them, you will not be alone. I go to United States, but still I'm with you, and I will find ways how to empower you and how help you to continue your way. And when I came to United, it was hard for me, but I had to be helpful for them rather than to be killed. And then I came to United States with my family, and I started looking for NGOs, for some organizations, women's rights organization and peace building organizations to help women's circle in Afghanistan to continue their way. And I also got contact with the Norwegian embassy and United States when they were hosting the negotiation table for Afghan peace. And I just made very contacts through ICANN, International Society Action Network. I just got contact with them, and they supported the Afghan Women's Organization for Equality, that they support that we could establish men's network around the villages. And you know, the government, they had their networks like Oloma network, like youth network, like women association, youth association, and many other associations. But I wanted to make these associations different, like mullah should be the beside of the teachers, science teacher and biology teacher, and the mullah should accept the youth, the influential villagers, the youth people, and also that is why I made association, but different people together, different like jobs, they came together, and this network was very helpful, because the men and villagers that they never sit at the schools to learn something, they were sitting on the chairs and listening to us, that what we are telling them and what we want them to do, and they started. They really started to support women's rights, and they prevented several forced and early marriages. And that is why I was so happy, and I thought that this is the when I started establishing men's network for defending women's rights. It was the challenges that I change it to opportunity.
Right.
Time. And I believe in this, that we should learn from challenges and we should change them into opportunities, not to stop work. And I really like the word resilience and perseverance, something.
Yeah, perseverance. Yeah.
Yeah, it has a very nice meaning, and we should follow that.
Yeah, absolutely. That collaboration between communities is also so important. Thank you, Hasina.
You're welcome.
Masa, would you like to introduce yourself now?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you so much, Kamandisi, for this opportunity. It's like, I really missed being in a meeting with my mom since we came from Afghanistan. It never happened here. So I'm very glad. So my name is Masa Ahmadi. I'm 21 years old, pre-med student at George Mason University, mental health advocate. And I came to United States, as my mom said, with my family in 2018 as SIV holders. And here, before we came, I was in medical school. So like, my dream is to become a medical doctor. And in Afghanistan, after a long, studying and efforts, I finally got into medical school. And it was my third year of medical school. Like I was in the halfway. And we got our visas and we had to leave our country. So it was very hard at that moment to leave my dream, and not leaving my dream, but like medical school and friends and every connections that I made. Because I was also very connected with the NGOs and organizations in Afghanistan. I started volunteering besides my mom from age 11 years old. So it was really overwhelming that I had to leave everything and start everything from zero. But at the same time, I was very glad that we'll have security in the United States. So to be honest, when we arrived, it was very hard for me. I used to go in a room and cry like for 2 months. Every day, it was like a scheduled time for me. And I did not give up. It was hard, but I said, like, what was it in Afghanistan that made me strong? I have to look into that. So there were friends, there were family, there were my education, volunteering. And I was like, what among those, what is it that I can have in here? So I said, volunteering. I will start with that. I'm sure that will change my life. And I started volunteering at the Alexandria Hospital in the emergency department. And I also started University at George Mason 2 months after we arrived. It was very challenging, the tuition. I was out of state student. We were immigrants. It was really hard. And but then the miracle happened. So Lutheran Social Services, they gave me 2 scholarships. And that was like one of the happiest moments of my life. And right now, I'm so happy to say that with help, I was able to build everything again. I'm still working, I'm still building, but I'm a senior right now in pre-med neuroscience. I'll take my MCAT this year. I'm an officer in the Cure Mental Illness Organization, my university, and also a certified peer educator. And yeah, I'm so glad to be here today.
That's incredible. You've accomplished a lot. And last but not least, of course, Marta Aparicio, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you. Well, that's amazing. It's hard to go after all of you. But good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here tonight. As you already heard, my name is Marta Aparicio. So I was born in Guatemala and raised by my paternal grandmother. My dad immigrated to the United States when I was a month old, and then my mom came here when I was a year old. So I was left with my grandma in Zacapa, Guatemala, and it was not until January 2003, when I was 11 years old, that I hugged and met my parents for the first time. When I moved to the United States, I grew up in the small city of Providence in the state of Rhode Island. Nevertheless, my new life in the US did not start off so smoothly. I started school during the second half of 5th grade without speaking English. I was in an English as a second language program until I got to high school. Concurrently, I was confronted with the reality of a dysfunctional family, which led me to leave my house in 2009. As a 17-year-old teenager, I started living on my own. I started working 30 hours a week while going to high school full time in order to survive as a teenager without any parental support. But thanks to the support of my mentors and my high school guidance counselor, I managed to graduate as my high school class valedictorian. Subsequently, I got a full scholarship to pursue my bachelor's at Georgetown University. And after undergrad, I worked in the education, retail, and social care sectors. In 2018, I had the privilege of being selected as State Department Charles B. Rangel Fellow. This is a highly selective program from the State Department that aims to attract and prepare outstanding and diverse young people for careers in the U.S. Foreign Service. Thanks to this fellowship, I was also able to pursue a master's in international affairs at the School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University in New York. This was like a dream come true to go to an Ivy League. And I recently completed my master's in May 2020. Then as of July 2020, I started working as a Foreign Service officer for the State Department. My first diplomatic assignment will be in Vientiane, Laos. So I'm very excited that I'm going to Southeast Asia for the first time, representing the US. And I'm currently learning Laotian as part of my language training. So overall, I would say since immigrating 18 years ago, the United States has empowered me not only to make a better life for myself, but also to serve my country and to help others. My biggest accomplishments derive from my dedication to service and fostering a sense of community and sisterhood. To me, is very important to volunteer and help others. So for the past, I would say 10 years, I've been serving my community as mentor to young high school girls, newly arrived refugees, and unaccompanied minors, usually from Latin America, because I end up going back to my hometown in Providence, Rhode Island to do this.
Wow, what a story.
Thank you.
All of you, all of your stories, it's just like the things that you've managed to accomplish are hard for anyone, and some of the things that you've had to overcome to get there are just monumental challenges. So it's so amazing to hear and inspiring, and like I feel like I can do everything I want to do because of everything that you're talking about. All of you have already touched a little bit on the theme of resilience, and I think that that's to be expected because resilience is such a crucial part of every immigrant's journey. Um, One thing that strikes me is that it's especially important during that transition of like your last few days in your home country and or country of origin, and then your first few days in the country that you're moving to. And like, I mean, Masa, you already talked a little bit about how hard that was. So I wanted just to hear from all of you, what do you remember about those last few days and the first few days? And how did you manage that transition? How did resilience come into it? You can go in any order.
Okay, so I guess I'll start first. So the last few days, especially the last 3 days before I left Burma in 1995, it was chaotic because the Burmese army literally like dropping bombs very close to where my village was. And so we literally were giving the news that we had to leave the village as soon as we can. And it's a village. I lived in the school and I look after the library, and with all the students, we had to literally pack the books and all this stuff. So we just pack everything we could, whatever we cannot, we just have to leave it. And then I remember on the 28th of January 1995, 3 p.m. Sorry, I'm getting sorry.
Oh no, Myra, it's totally fine.
I thought this year was over, but it hasn't over yet, apparently. So I got on the boat with the last group of people. And then we crossed the river without knowing when are we going to get to come back. And apparently it took me so many years. I didn't get to step on the land of Burma until 2017. So it was quite a while, but I was very happy to be able to get back to Burma in 2017 for work. But anyway, so between getting to the US in 2004 and 1995, when I left my home village, I was still living in the refugee camp in Thailand for a while, and also trying to find my way to get into Thailand to work illegally. And I ended up having the opportunity working for a small organization called the Burma Project, which was funded by Soros Foundation. And that's how I started off my advocacy life. So I worked on the education and education projects, especially scholarship, but also at the same time, I had the opportunity to speak up for the refugee students who didn't have the opportunity to go to school. So I myself didn't get to have the scholarship going to school, but I get to work for people and then having to see them getting to go to school, getting the scholarship, looking through their application papers and having the voice to tell um, the people who make decision that this person is good in this way and this person is good in this way was like a big giving back to the community. So so basically I didn't get to go to school since I was like I was 19 until I came to the US in 2004. So when I ended up finally getting to leave Thailand and came to the US, it was kind of like I was thrilled at one point that I get to go to a new country. I'm going to get to learn all this stuff, but at the same time, it was like literally the unknown because I didn't have any family members, but I had a friend, a very good friend who I worked for, so like my boss as well as my mentor. So she was like, you can come and then we can send for your scholarship. But when you get here, you have to work your way to school and pay for your own bills. But then I also, when I got here, I was so excited. Like every other people, I went to school, take classes. But oh boy, the first week I came home and I was just like, what was going on? I didn't remember a thing. And so I finally had the idea that I had to have a tape. So I literally took my tape recorder to my professor. I was like, can I tape it? Because I'm not going to be able to get anything if I were going this way. And the professor was like, so why not? So I ended up having to use my tape recorder for 4 years to be able to study. But on the other hand, I also had to struggle with being an undocumented person because I came in for a year and then I realized I wasn't able to go back. So because I came in as a student, but then I wasn't able to go back. So I had to apply for asylum, which I was rejected. So then I had to leave as an undocumented person. So basically I had to pay for my scholarship, my school fees because I wasn't entitled to scholarship or anything. And also not being able to work. So I literally had to work under the table. So like I told a friend of mine today before we come on, I literally sometimes has to choose between education or not. Because my whole point is to get education so that I get to I get to work a better job because back then I just literally had to wait the table. But at the same time, if I don't have enough to pay for my living, then I'm going to have to go and live under the bridge and become homeless. So it was really hard at the time. And also at the same time, having to be worrying about when the police will be knocking on my door and telling me that you are deported. But that doesn't really, like every other ladies we heard tonight, that doesn't really stop me of doing what I was doing, which finally, it took me 5 years having to go to the court like 3 times. And then I finally got my asylum. And at the same time, I graduated from my school. So I guess that was the big rewarding in my entire life, I guess, because the first person getting to go to college in my whole clan. And so it was amazing.
Wow, thank you for sharing that with us. Marta, go ahead.
Always clapping for her.
Clapping.
But I can go if you want me to.
If you, yeah, sure.
Sure. Well, it's kind of hard to follow her, but I would say I mean, I guess on my end, from what I remember, my last days in Guatemala were definitely more full of happiness, I will say, and sadness at the same time. It was a mixed emotions. But I tried to spend as much time as possible with childhood friends because I didn't know if I would be able to see them again. However, my first days in the United States were a little bit scary. I felt like I was out of my element. It was a complete culture shock. I arrived here in the month of January, so it was very cold. The houses all looked the same because they were covered in snow. Shortly thereafter, I started school, and I will say, even though I was in a bilingual program, the students that spoke Spanish were mainly from Dominican Republic. So it was a different type of Spanish. I couldn't understand some of the things they said. Then when I went to recess in school, the majority of the students are speaking in English. So I would just look around confused and wonder whether my parents had made the right decision. And I will say I recalled one particular incident in class. It was reading time, and since I was the only new student, I wasn't part of any reading groups. Instead, I sat in a corner by myself. And I remember this incident because I felt left out and isolated. And I told myself that I must start watching cartoons in English and like try to learn the language as soon as possible in order to make friends and fit in. And that first summer in the United States, I spent a lot of time reading baby books and watching TV in English and doing everything I could. And I will say, kind of in short, the moral of the story is that I've always thought that change is inevitable and I must embrace it. I must learn to embrace it. And I think if we're open minded and learn how to be resilient, that not only helps us to embrace change, but it also helps us to learn from it, to grow, and to thrive in it. I think whenever I've received a rejection letter or something doesn't go as planned, I think to myself, it's probably easier to give up than to get up and try again. But I must continue to being optimistic if I want to succeed and get anywhere in life. I'm a true believer that life is about taking risks and embracing change. And if we're resilient, we can pretty much achieve anything that we set our minds to.
That's a beautiful message. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did anyone else want to
Yeah,
talk about that?
go.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Yeah, my last days back home were exciting and a little bit sad. It was exciting because 6 months before coming here, it was the period the government was persecuting me. For me, it was a big relief leaving the country and coming to the US. In the same time, it was sad because of civil war. I didn't see my mother for 10 years. So I was leaving the country without meeting her or saying bye-bye to her and to other families. And I had my niece. She was just 10 years old. I had to make arrangement for somebody to come live in my apartment with her because I was supposed to go back home after my school here. So when I came, it was good. I was thinking I would be good here, but it was still hard. Before going to sleep, even in the US, I have to check everywhere to see if there is nobody in the house trying to hurt me, maybe the police from back home. So it was still in my mind. And it was also hard to trust people. I was living with 5 wonderful ladies from Ecuador, Myanmar, and Argentina. But when they want to go home or just to eat together, I wouldn't associate with them because I didn't trust people. So I missed that opportunity because when I think that my own father was supposed to be there for me, left, and my government did the same. So how trust could I have two people I didn't know? So that was my life when I came here. But later, I think I'm adjusting now to start trusting people again.
Yeah, that sounds really difficult. Sometimes we don't recognize the little things that happen to us as children and how they affect us long term. And it takes a lot of growth and insight to recognize that about yourself and then work on it. Thank you so much for sharing that. Um, I also just wanted to ask you all just about, I mean, we're here for Women's Month, right? So, how do you think your identity as a woman has impacted your journey and your path to becoming who you are today?
Okay. I guess I'll start off again. Hopefully, I don't end up crying again. So I think being a woman for me in advocacy world is also part of my identity, but also it makes me feel responsible and obligated to a certain extent that there are so many women in this world, countless women, who don't have the opportunity I have or the opportunity we have. I mean, for instance, in Burma, especially the Rohingya women, some of you might have heard about the Rohingya community in Burma, who are living at the western side of the country, bordering with Bangladesh. So they are Muslims population, and they are unique comparing to other parts of the country where we have Christians, Buddhists, and so we do have the rules and the norms where, yes, women cannot go out by ourselves. But a lot of times we have the opportunity to a certain extent where we get to go out, we get to go to school, we get to share our own life experience or else. But the Rohingya community, especially the female, they are still keeping in their own community. They're almost like looking at the second class citizens in their own community where they don't get to go to school. And then if they're going to go somewhere, one of the elderly person in the house or the brother or the sister has to accompany them, those kind of stuff, which I'm pretty sure in other Muslims country also having to go through. But what I'm trying to draw the difference between with us is that what we have, looking at our country, what we have and they don't have is very hard for me to imagine. Like, we're living in the same country and we have that rights, but they are not. So, and also seeing how men are treated, women in our community in a different manner, where as if women are not quite a human person, a human being. So that is why we have been using the term where the Burmese military use rape as the weapon of war in order to demoralize and dehumanize the ethnic minorities. But at the same time, you also have men inside the house that not really value our own family members. Like my sister, when we grew up, she was literally told by my uncle that she cannot go to school because she's not going to get anywhere. She's going to end up marrying and then having children, because we have to live with them, because my parents were killed since I was a child by the Burmese army, and therefore my sister didn't have any place to go. So when I look at how women have to go through what they had to go through, it takes me to the point where I'm here at this place. This is my rights, and I have to making sure that what I have is also what they have. Yes, I am not getting nowhere close to where my ambition, my aim is, but that is why I still having to do what I have to do.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Hasina, yeah, please, of course, go ahead.
Yes, in Afghanistan, at the like in 2006 to 2012, women set themselves on fire and just suicide themselves because of violating rights against them, like their rights was violating. And when I went to the hospitals and I wanted to follow their cases, and I introduced them to the court or to the other organizations that they had, free lawyers, and also our organization, we were following their cases. And when our team went to the hospital and listened to their voices, and they were in a terrible situation. At that time, I just asked them why you did this, and they were telling that it doesn't mean that we don't want to be alive. We are advocating, and we are speak out for my life. We are telling you, we are telling the people of Afghanistan and the government that we want to remain alive. We don't want to uh, um, um, die. It is this action of us just advocate for us and our and other women's. And that time, I thought, unfortunately, this kind of things they uh, inform us, and they told us to take action, to take quick action for the and be wise of this women, and you have to work for this women. You are not at this situation, and you are a little bit. I mean, you are educated, and some people are there that will listen to their your voice than them, and you have to be their voice. And that is why I think most of women rights activists in Afghanistan, their work just uh, started by the voice of marginalized of women, that they were killing, they were set themselves on fire, and other issues like this.
Wow, yeah, that's really horrifying.
Yeah.
No, I can say that I was born in a country where even though you don't find a job as a lady, it's fine because you're getting married. You will have kids, so you're okay. And I didn't want to follow that path because I wanted to follow my dreams. When I was not finding a job after my first master in law, and I couldn't go to the law school to be a lawyer, over I have a lot of friends, they just got married or do whatever they want to do. I'm like, no, I want to do something else. Since I love to be a journalist too, I said maybe I'm gonna do another master and be a journalist. So I went there and I got them, and then I came to the US because of that. So I think if I was a man, I wouldn't have those three masters. I would just have maybe one. And I said, since they think as a lady you cannot do anything good, just being a mother and children, I'm gonna beat all these men and get more degrees than them. And I did it because in my country we don't have a lot of people with three masters. You know, even when we were preparing to have the scholarship of Fulbright, we went, the first thing, you have to get a TOEFL. So they have to like see your level in English. It was just a written test. And I beat a lot of men because they were even asking me, you don't even speak English. How did you get that TOEFL? We speak English, we couldn't get it. I just studied because I didn't want them to say that, you see, she's a woman, she's a lady, and she failed. So I think it's not your gender that determines if you can make it or not. It's just your own determination. If you have your dreams, just you have to make them work. And I love that Maya Angelou, she said, you cannot control everything happening to you, but you can choose to not be reduced by those things. And that was, and I love following that advice.
Yeah, that's beautiful advice. And I love your energy just generally. Like you really did show them. That's so great. Did anyone else want to talk on that, or
I can talk on it a little bit.
okay. I mean, maybe also couple it with jumping off of what Nandit was just saying. I was just really curious about like what resources were available to all of you at the most difficult points of your life, and what do you wish you would have had access to kind of help bolster that inner resilience that you all clearly have. So I was just thinking about that as Nanit was talking, but you can also talk about the identity as a woman question if you'd like, Marta.
Okay. I had psychological support at the university because when I came, I was really, really down. So I had it even with task. They helped me a lot. I found friends there and I could trust, and when I needed help, I could call some people and then we could talk. So I think that the main support I needed that time, it was a psychological support. But I don't know what I would like more maybe, or to add to that, it was material support. When you're coming in a country and then you realize you cannot go back home because of your job you're doing as investigative journalist, and you find yourself here without any friends, without any family, and you just have your savings. The work permit, when you're applying for asylum seeker, you have to wait maybe almost 1 year before getting your work permit. So in this country, how much money can you save to live 1 year without working, without any support? So you have to pay your rent, you have to pay your food, and you have to pay for your transport. You have also to find ways to keep you alert, to use your time. But you need even money to take transportation. So even really material support with a financial one is really a good thing, because sometimes you can find yourself sleeping outside because you don't have anywhere to go.
Yeah, of course. Financial and emotional support are so key for, I mean, everyone, but especially when you're new to the country and trying to follow your dreams.
Okay. So I'll touch a little bit, I guess, on the identity of women, but then go more into the resources. So as many of you had mentioned, pretty much, I believe like our identity as women can influence our decisions and actions and cause unequal treatment by our family or by society. I think growing up for me in a Latinx household with one sister and one brother, so it's three of us, I learned about machismo, right? This strong sense of masculine pride with double standards for women as opposed to men, and learning that it's a woman's job to serve men, to take care of children, to cook, to clean the home. And I thought all of this was normal until I started getting a little bit older and more educated. I realized it isn't. I feel like as a woman, I not only struggle with my identity at home, but also in society. As a first generation college Latina, I always doubted myself. I doubted my ability to accomplish my goals. Usually, I doubted whether my English was good enough to raise my hand in class. And without any parental guidance, life appeared to be a big puzzle that I needed to solve on my own. There were numerous instances where I had people telling me to conform or not to reach too high. I don't know if this was a byproduct of me being a woman or a Latina or a combination of both, because they're intertwined. And for me, I believe that mentors have played a crucial role in my life. If it wasn't for the support and guidance of mentors, and one of them is here in this call today, Mr. Steve Cronin, he was my mentor since high school. And thanks to him and my high school guidance counselor, if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't have attended an elite university like Georgetown to start off. They pretty much pushed me to dream big. They told me what things to consider when I was looking into colleges. They took me on college tours and they guided me through the college application process. However, like my first year at Georgetown, it wasn't smooth sailing, I will say. As a woman of color, there were many obstacles I had to confront, such as rigorous courses, socioeconomic class differences, and self doubt. At the beginning, I didn't think I belonged at Georgetown because I didn't attend a private school, nor did I come from a wealthy family like the majority of my peers. I thought about dropping out of school or transferring to another school, but thankfully, the director of the financial aid office at Georgetown offered me a job at her office when she saw I was stressed. She informed me about the resources at the university, and she convinced me to stay at the school for at least 1 year. She told me I had to give myself time. Other mentors at the university and my mentor from high school also checked up on me on a weekly basis. They sent me care packages. I never knew what this was until I got to college. They sent me articles of famous people who graduated from Georgetown, and they told me one day that will be me. and pretty much they ultimately helped me to believe in myself, right? Something that I was still struggling with. And I will say overall, the mentoring has been an essential part of my life. But I wish the public school systems were equipped to help students of color, because in my opinion, they aren't. Oftentimes, public schools in urban areas fail students of color. I believe high schools need to push like Latinas and students of color to dream big and not to just settle, I will say, for community college or for a state school. And there's nothing wrong with those schools, but oftentimes I feel like teachers and staff tell students to settle for less. When in reality, the big name schools are the ones that have more money to give and they have more resources to help support students like myself. Because I think it's not just about getting students accepted to college, but it's also about graduating. And retention of minorities is a big problem for many universities, and that is because they do not have the resources to help like low income first generation students like myself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really heartwarming to hear that all of that support actually came through for you.
Thank you. Yes.
Right. So I'd like to also touch upon the question. So the resources that were available to me at the most difficult point, which was when I arrived in here. So it was really a difficult point in my life, a very big transition. It was Lutheran Social Services. I'm very proud to say that because they were there in every step of my education for me, with their scholarships, mentors, and they helped me make connections. And I'm really glad that Dana and Shelby, they're here today. I really thank you and every one in LSS. And the things I wish were I had access to it was free mental health care clinics, you know, because when you arrive in here, you don't have insurance. Although when it's like we have a physical pain, we kind of feel that urge to go to doctor, you know, and even if you will be in debt after that. But when we are dealing with the mental illness, a lot of time we don't realize it. And we think that, okay, I came from another country, I'm resettling, it's kind of normal, but it's not, you know, it's you have to reach out and ask for help. And I really wish there was a resource for that, which is why I'm advocating for it right now. And I would love to have anyone's opinion on it, to how to find a free mental health clinics. If anyone has an idea, I will put my email in the chat. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that distinction that you just made about the way people deal with physical health versus mental health is so important. And it's great that you're advocating on behalf of that cause. I think that's really important. We got a few questions in from people who are participating or attending the event today. So we got one from Cameron. He asked that as immigrants to the US, how do you balance your identity and cultural ties to your original country with your new identity in the US? And how has that identity balance affected or helped or hindered your resilience?
For me, I don't find it hard here to maintain my identity because in the US, you find people coming from everywhere. And I've never met anybody like challenging my identity. Why did you eat this? Why did you dress this way? So that's something very, very positive in this country. Yeah, except some comment on my accent. If not, no. Yeah, so I don't have an issue with that. So I still continue eating my food from home when I'm learning from other people also. Yeah.
That's lovely. I'm so glad that you've had a positive experience in that regard.
I guess nobody challenged my identity in a sense that me being a Burmese, but it is myself that I have to remind myself a lot of times that we do have culture or things over here that are not always seem to be good for our community. And in that case, then I have to remind myself to take what is good and just leave out what it is that not good. And so we have a lot of, for instance, right now in the US, we have more than 100,000 Burmese refugees coming in the past 10 years. And we also have the very younger generation who barely speak the language we speak and eat the food we eat and speak the way we speak, for instance. And a lot of times it's kind of hard to bring them into our circle, but at the same time, they're not really fitting into the Americans' culture yet, not quite yet. So that is the little thing where they are in between, and we're trying to help them understand how to identify themselves, whether it doesn't matter whether as a Burmese or Burmese American or as an American, but they need to figure out themselves, like who they are. And so a lot of times, for instance, they go to school and then their friends will be like, oh, you're not one of us. Like my one of my nephews, he was told, like, you're not one of us, you cannot play volleyball with us. And he's like 6 feet tall. And he was just like, so why I cannot? And then he was told that, oh, you are Asian. So these kind of things that we're trying to help fixing the problem in order to help our younger generation figure out their own identity. But that doesn't really pertain to myself. For myself, I'm okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that intergenerational conflict is really important, though. Yeah, like Adam is saying in the chat that a lot of us first and second generation kids can relate, and as a first generation, I definitely feel that. I also wonder about, like, just the resiliency that is involved in trying to hold on to your cultural traditions. Like, as an Indian American, it's not always the easiest to find the spices that you want to cook the foods that help you connect back to your culture, or whatever, like, items that you need to be able to celebrate your festivals. Have any of you encountered that, and how do you kind of deal with that?
I mean, I will talk a little bit about it. I will say, for me, I mean, as someone mentioned, it's amazing, right? The United States is as the melting pot. I think the first time that my kind of identity as a minority was questioned, or I thought about it, was when I went to college. I think when I initially came to the US, since I went to public urban schools in Providence, it was predominantly Latinos and African Americans. And when I went to Georgetown, it was the whole opposite. So it was the first time someone labeled me, like, I wasn't just Martha, you're a minority, you're a first generation, you're a low income student. Like, all those labels became part of my identity. And that's when I first, like, realized it, and I started questioning who I was, and what people were saying about me. And at first I will say it was difficult, because also some of my friends from high school who stayed in Rhode Island started telling me, oh, now that you're at Georgetown, you're becoming more Americanized. And I wasn't sure what that was supposed to mean, because I wanted to speak more English than Spanish, or vice versa. Well, more English than Spanish usually when I was at Georgetown. um, but I will say that I started thinking and seeing my cultures as, like, as a strength and as a way to, like, I love learning about new cultures. So now I kind of use it as a way to educate other people, as well. So at Georgetown, I was part of the, like, a Latino and annual Latino showcase, and I will teach people how to dance Latin dances. Then I was part of, like, this living learning community, and we started, I found other women as well who were from different countries in Latin America. And we were kind of educating the Georgetown community on the cultural differences of all the countries of Latin America, that they're not all the same, because most of the time people just group them all together, and things like that. For me, it's been finding ways to educate the community. That's how I've worked around it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Stephen actually just messaged me that he wants to ask a question out loud. So Stephen, feel free to ask that now.
First of all, just thank you, ladies, for sharing your very inspirational stories tonight. I really do appreciate it. But Nanette, there was something that you said that I think is common in all the stories that have been told tonight. And very succinctly, the message I got from you is, I will not accept less. I want more. And I know from all my conversations with Marta over the years that she has a very similar attitude. I'm often amazed at Marta and her sister growing up in a similar environment and the differences in the way both lives have turned out. And Marta has that same attitude. I will not accept less. I want more. So my question to all of you is, how do we instill that attitude in so many young people, especially in our urban schools today, to get them to embrace that same attitude that I will not accept less. There's more I know I can be in my life, and I will persist until I get that. So I'd love to hear your answer to that question.
Well, I'm gonna say for me, it's just through education and example. So parents, they have to teach their children at home through the example, because my attitude, I got it from my mother. When she was supposed to get married, she was even given marriage at 12, but she refused. She said, I'm going to school, I'm not getting married. So her mother, her family, they have to give back the dowry they paid until she went back to school, and then she get married later. That she went to school, she got the education she wanted. So since I was young, my mother taught me that I have to, I don't have to like follow people's path. I have to make my standards, what I want, and then give myself means to get to the point. She was even saying, even me, my own mother, I do something against you, you have to protest, because you're the only one who can defend yourself, even against me, your own mother. And you have always to look the better things for yourself, and you have to set what is best for you. First of all, it's the education, wherever you're going, even the standards and morals. We have to teach your kids at school, and maybe organize some like conversation with kids. What do you want is best like for you? What do you think about leadership? What do you think about this? So we can know what they're thinking about it, and then we can direct their path or their thought where they want to go, because kids, they are like it's the foundation. If we miss that step, it's very hard to correct it when they are teenager or they are adult. So when they are kids, it's the time really to like plant good seeds on them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess I can say a little bit of my, although you've heard a lot from me. Well, as you already know, Mr. Cronin, I believe I draw my strength from my paternal grandmother, and also from public service. But I think in terms of like instilling this idea into teenagers, I believe if it's not coming from the house, which sometimes is not, especially for students in public who go to public schools in urban areas, I believe it can come from the school itself, from having teachers that can be as role models. I think and I didn't really realize this until I got older, but when I think back to high school, and even now as an adult, when I think back even to my work experience, I've had a very like small number of well, in high school, I had a small number of female teachers who are teachers of color. If I had female teachers, they were all white teachers. And growing up as an adult, all the jobs I had, I think I've only had 4 women bosses, and they've all been all white females. So I think it's important to have more women of color in leadership positions and as teachers. So when we're growing up as like children and teenagers, so we can look up to them as examples, as role models, and we can just relate to them. pretty much, and kind of draw our strength from them if we are not getting that at home.
Yeah,
Thank you,
I
Martha.
totally agree with that. Okay, so we've got about 5-10 minutes left. I wanted to ask one more question that we got from the audience. Ali asked what all of your goals are for the future and what projects you're currently working on.
Okay. Now I'm working of expanding my small business. I've just started some months ago. My next goal is to have my PhD, maybe in, I'm thinking about law since I love it, or something related to law, really to have my PhD. That's my dreams for now.
I will take my medical college admission test this year. And my dreamy school is New York University. So Martha, thank you for mentioning that. That's my dreamy school. And I like to become a neurologist and at the same time advocate for mental health, as I mentioned earlier.
Well, I'm just getting started with my career as a U.S. diplomat, but one of my, I guess, initial dreams is kind of to get out of my comfort zone, as if I haven't done it enough, but go to different parts of the world that I haven't been, learn different languages, learn about different cultures, meet people around the world. And I think in the future, I would like to start an organization focused on helping women or educating more women, not just in the US, but perhaps around the world.
I guess for me, at this time, I probably just stick around with my advocacy stuff because it is very much needed right now. But of course, I'm trying to expand. I'm trying to create more Myras so that they will know how to do what I do, so that we all together can amplify the voices of the people on the ground. Because like I said earlier, if we have 100,000 saying Burmese refugees here or the Burmese diaspora in the US, and if 10 or 20% of them know how to do what I do, then we have a much louder voices where we can speak to our government officials here. We can also speak to the church and other people, or maybe those who are in the other side of the pound, Europe or Australia or New Zealand. We can help amplify the voices of the people. And that doesn't really pertain just for Burma, but we're talking about human beings around the world, considering how many other people in other countries that are suffering human rights violations, mass atrocities, genocide, and all this stuff. We can just talk about it in our own little space and making sure that one way or the other, these abuses is reducing and the loss of life is reduced. So I guess that's my hope. It is big, but it's a must.
That's a beautiful goal. Did anyone else want to share their hopes and dreams for the future? Okay, well then one final question I promised that I had was just, where do you draw your strength from?
Presently right now, I draw my strength from the people who are standing for their rights, especially, for instance, like in Burma right now. They literally get on the street. Perhaps they know in their head that today might be my last day before they say goodbye to their family and going out to protest in the street. But with that in mind, they just go out and do it with all the courage they have. And if I were living here, if I'm safe, not worrying about sleeping at night, if the Burmese military will shoot into my house or knock on my door, yeah, that is very inspiring for me. That keeps telling me that I have to continue what I'm doing because they need me.
I draw my strength from my family, my grandmother and my mom. You know, they taught me a lot of things, especially my grandmother before she dies. So I always keep them in my mind because I have to be alive so I can accomplish some of things she couldn't do in her life. And even though I went through a lot, I'm grateful to be alive because back home, many of my friends died because of civil wars and other situations. I don't have really a lot of childhood friends because they died. And I'm alive. So I want even one day to write a book where I can, talk about them. And I have to be strong. I have to be alive. I want also to be a model to other ladies, kids, even men. So that's why I have to continue to be strong. If I just give up, I won't be an example and a model. So I have to be strong. So I draw my strength through many people and many situations.
I personally draw my strength from three things. Uh, one is my faith in God, and I know He takes care of everything and everyone. And second, my mom, she's such a strong lady. She always supported me. And I hope one day I will become like her. I'm so proud of you, Mom. I'm telling it here. And she's been there for me every time. And she's such a strong lady. All of you here, you're very strong. And I hope one day I will become like you. For all the young generations, you mean a lot. Your experiences, everything, we are like, okay, you've done this, we can do it too. The last one is from the street children in Afghanistan. I know a few of them, and I'm still in touch with them. They are living on the street, but they are so hopeful and so strong. And I know I have to do something for them. So that's where my strength comes from.
As I mentioned earlier, I draw my strength from my paternal grandmother, whom I'm named after, so Mama Marta, and I also draw my strength from public service. I genuinely enjoy helping others. It brings fulfillment to my life. And my grandmother has been my number one fan since I was born. And she pretty much has taught me not just to believe in myself, but also to care for others, because that goes a long way.
Okay, well, thank you all so much for sharing your stories, your emotions. You've been so vulnerable, and I'm really just stunned to have been able to share this evening with you all. Um, yeah, this was just a very powerful evening. So thank you all for your time, and thank you to everyone who joined as well for coming here and being with us today. I just want to end by, as promised, telling you a little bit more about Kama and some of the things we have coming up. The easiest way to keep track of what we're doing is by following our Instagram, which is just at kama.dc. We also have a very, very cool handle called Immigrants of the DMV. So that's at Immigrants of the DMV, which gives a peek into the lives of immigrants who live in the area. And so if anyone here, first of all, follow the account because it's really cool. Every week, a different person takes over and kind of shares their story. But also, if you're interested in being one of those people to take over the account and share your story, please get in touch with us because we're always looking for new voices, and we'd love to hear from you. And lastly, the next few events that we have coming up on April 3rd, we have a noodle class. And on April 22nd, we have our storytelling night featuring second generation immigrants. We're calling it Kids of the DMV. So please feel free to join those events. We'd love to see you. And once again, just thank you all so much for being here today. This was a really incredible event, and it's all because of the stories and thoughts that you shared. So thank you.